Welcome back, seekers of wisdom, to day 17 of our 30-day Wisdom Quest Challenge. In our last session, we explored the nature of resilience, the courageous art of bouncing back from the inevitable storms of life. We learned that true strength is not rigid, but flexible, like an ancient ironwood tree that bends in the wind but does not break. Today, we delve even deeper into this profound concept of yielding. We will explore a form of wisdom that often feels deeply counterintuitive and even frightening to our modern sensibilities, which so often glorify struggle, effort, and control. It is the wisdom that comes not from striving, but from stopping. Not from fighting with all our might, but from gracefully letting go. Imagine you have fallen into a great, powerful river. Your first instinct, your every instinct, born from a primal need for survival, is to fight. You thrash against the current. You swim with all your strength. You try to impose your will upon the water. You set your sights on the opposite bank and fight to reach it, but the river is infinitely stronger than you are. The more you struggle, the more precious energy you waste, the more water you swallow, and the faster you sink into exhaustion and despair. But what if there was another way? What if, in a moment of profound clarity, you realized the fight was unwinnable? What if, instead of fighting, you took a deep breath, relaxed your body, and simply chose to float? What if you allowed the river to carry you, trusting that its powerful current would eventually lead you to a calm shore further downstream? Today, we are learning how to float. We are exploring the profound and powerful art of acceptance and surrender, and the deep, unshakable peace that is found only when our strenuous resistance finally fails. Our story is set in a remote, high-altitude monastery, perched on the edge of a sheer cliff, overlooking a great, undameable river that carved its way through the mountains. The river was known to the monks for centuries as the Great Teacher. It was not a gentle stream. It was a powerful, wild, and untamable force of nature, with treacherous rapids that roared with white water, deep eddies that could spin a log like a top, and a current so powerful it was said to have polished the very stones on the bottom of the world. For a novice to graduate from their studies and become a master, they had to pass one final legendary test: to navigate a dangerous, mile-long stretch of the Great Teacher and arrive safely in the calm, silent basin downstream. For generations, the monastery's history was filled with stories of the brave, strong, and clever monks who had failed. Their broken boats and broken spirits were a testament to the river's unforgiving power. In this monastery lived a young monk named Jirro. By every measure, he was the most promising novice in a generation. He was physically strong, his discipline was flawless, and he possessed an iron will that had been forged in a difficult childhood. An orphan left to fend for himself, he had learned early on that his survival depended entirely on his own effort, his own grit, and his own refusal to quit. Willpower was the central pillar of his identity. He had come to believe, with the quiet arrogance of youth, that his strength and determination could overcome any obstacle, solve any problem, and defeat any adversary. He saw the river not as a teacher, but as a final, worthy opponent to be conquered. His motivation was to be the one who finally tamed the Great Teacher, to prove that the force of a focused human will was stronger than the chaotic force of nature. He was a man deeply and fundamentally invested in the power of resistance. His teacher was the abbot, an old man whose face was a serene map of wrinkles, and whose eyes held the calm, deep quality of the basin downstream. The abbot had mastered the river decades ago, though no one had ever seen him do it, and no boat of his was ever found. He moved with a quiet, fluid grace, and his teachings were as enigmatic as the river itself. He never gave direct answers, speaking only in questions, parables, and quiet observations. He embodied the wisdom of acceptance and the quiet, almost invisible strength of surrender. He knew that the river could not be conquered, only understood. His attempts to impart this wisdom to Jirro were met with respectful, but firm in comprehension. To master a thing, one must first learn its nature, the abbot would say. Jirro would nod and reply, "Yes, master. I study the river's nature, so I may learn how to defeat it." The abbot would simply smile, a sad and knowing look in his ancient eyes. The day came for Jirro's first attempt. The conflict was not merely between a man and a river. It was a grander, more universal conflict between the human ego and the nature of reality itself. Jirro's internal struggle was between his fierce desire to conquer through resistance and the abbot's gentle, maddening whispers about the wisdom of yielding. This internal fight, this refusal to accept the world as it was the true and ultimate source of his suffering. Jirro spent a month building a boat. It was a masterpiece of strength and defiance. He chose the hardest ironwood from the forest and reinforced the hull with iron braces he forged himself in the monastery smithy. The prow was sharp and aggressive, designed to cut through the water and split the rapids. It was a boat built for a battle, a physical manifestation of his own rigid and forceful will. The abbot watched him work, occasionally bringing him water. "A strong boat for a strong man," was all he said one afternoon. "The river is also strong." Jirro took it as a compliment. He launched his boat into the current at the head of the rapids. He rowed with all his immense strength, his muscles straining, his teeth gritted in determination. He aimed his sharp prow at the heart of the whitewater, intending to power directly through the chaos. He fought every cross-current, every eddy that tried to pull him from his chosen course. But the river was not an opponent that could be overpowered by muscle. It was a system of immense, interconnected energy. It did not fight back. It simply flowed. It yielded to his boat by parting around it, and then consumed it with its greater force. A powerful eddy, one he had tried to row against, spun his strong boat around like a childish toy and smashed it against a hidden rock with an echoing crack. The iron-reinforced wood splintered, and Jirro was thrown into the churning, icy water. He barely managed to scramble ashore, his body bruised, his magnificent boat destroyed, his spirit utterly and completely defeated. The abbot found him shivering on the riverbank, staring at the wreckage. He handed Jirro a warm, dry cloak and sat beside him on the cold stones. "You fought the river," the abbot said simply, after a long silence. "Did you win?" "The river is too strong," Jirro gasped, his pride deeply wounded. "Its power is absolute." "No," the abbot corrected gently, his voice barely a whisper above the river's roar. "The river is not strong. It is simply itself. It does not possess strength. It possesses the quality of flow. Your fight is what made it feel strong. Your resistance fuels your suffering. You gave the river your own strength, your own effort, your own powerful will, and the river simply used that energy against you. The harder you rowed, the more powerfully it threw you against the rocks. You exhausted yourself fighting an opponent that wasn't even aware of your struggle." Jirro, humbled but with his core belief in his own will still intact, spent another month preparing for his second attempt. He would not use brute force. This time, he would be clever. He would outsmart the river. He spent weeks on the cliffs above the rapids, not exercising, but studying. He created detailed, intricate maps of the currents. He studied the principles of fluid dynamics from ancient texts. He believed he had found a pattern, a secret path through the chaos. He built a new boat, this time a lighter, more nimble craft, designed to dodge and weave, to exploit the river's perceived weaknesses. It was a testament to his intellect, just as the first had been a testament to his strength. He launched his new boat, and for a while, his cleverness seemed to work. He avoided the main rapids, darting between rocks, a smirk of satisfaction on his face. He was not overpowering the river. He was outthinking it. But the river was not a static puzzle to be solved. It was alive, dynamic, and unpredictable. A current shifted in a way his maps had not predicted, creating a new, powerful whirlpool where there had been calm water just moments before. His light boat was caught instantly. It was spun around violently, and before his intellect could even process what was happening, the boat was capsized, and he was once again thrown into the cold, indifferent water. He emerged on the shore, sputtering and shivering, this time with the added, bitter shame of his cleverness, having proven just as useless as his strength. He returned to the abbot, his head hung low, his spirit utterly crushed. "I am ready to give up," Jirro said, his voice hollow. "It is impossible. The river cannot be beaten by strength or by intelligence. I resign myself to failure. I am not worthy to be a master here." The abbot poured him a cup of tea, the steam rising into the cold mountain air. "Ah," he said, his eyes twinkling with a strange light. "Now we have finally arrived at the true beginning of your lesson. Now that your two greatest weapons, your strength and your intellect, have been proven useless, you are finally ready to learn. You speak of resignation. You must understand the difference between acceptance and resignation. It is the most important distinction a person can ever learn." He took a slow sip of his tea. "Resignation," the abbot continued, "is a state of defeated helplessness. It is the belief that nothing can be done, that the situation is hopeless. It is giving up and allowing yourself to sink to the bottom of the river, to be crushed by its weight. It is a state of despair, a closing down of the heart, a declaration that life is won and you have lost. It is a cold, gray, and lifeless state." He paused, letting his words settle deep into Jirro's exhausted mind. "Acceptance," he continued, his voice becoming warmer, "is something else entirely. It is a state of active, courageous, and clear-eyed engagement with reality. It is not giving up. It is giving up the fight. It is the wise and powerful act of acknowledging the river's true nature and its immense power without judgment. It is the wisdom to stop wasting your precious life energy trying to change what cannot be changed. Acceptance is not sinking. It is the conscious decision to learn how to float. It is not the end of effort, but the beginning of skillful, harmonious effort. It is not despair. It is the gateway to true peace." Jirro was at his lowest point. His two great pillars of identity, his strength and his intellect, both shattered against the implacable reality of the river. He was on the very edge of resignation, ready to declare himself a failure and abandon his quest. The next morning, the abbot led him back to the riverbank, to the head of the treacherous rapids. But this time, there was no boat. The abbot held only a small, simple float made of buoyant wood, with a rope handle. "Your final attempt," the abbot said. Jirro stared at him in disbelief. "With what? How can I possibly navigate with only this?" "You will not navigate," the abbot replied, his voice soft but firm. "You will surrender. You will surrender your plans, your ambitions, your fears, and your very idea of who you are. Not to me, not to the monastery, but to the river. You will surrender to the present moment. For 2 months, your mind has been in the future, plotting your victory. You have not been here at all. The lesson is not about controlling the river. The lesson is about realizing you never had control in the first place. That was an illusion that caused you great pain. Your only task now, the final practical techniques for cultivating acceptance, is to practice non-resistance. Let go of your fear, let go of your plans, and trust the teacher." Jirro's heart pounded with a primal terror. Every instinct, every fiber of his being, every lesson his hard life had taught him, screamed at him to fight, to strive, to control. To willingly enter that churning chaos with nothing but a small piece of wood felt like suicide. It was an act of madness. But he looked at the abbot's serene, unwavering face, and he looked at the metaphorical wreckage of his own failed efforts, and he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that his way did not work. His resistance had failed. He took the float. He waded into the icy water, the powerful current gripping his legs. His entire body tensed, ready to struggle. He looked back at the abbot, his eyes wide with fear. The abbot simply nodded, a look of profound love and encouragement on his face. Jirro closed his eyes, took a ragged breath, and did the hardest, most courageous thing he had ever done in his life. He let go. He pushed off from the shore, gripped the float, and surrendered his body to the water. The moment he stopped fighting was a moment of profound, earth-shattering revelation. The current, which had felt like a malicious, punishing enemy, now felt like a powerful, neutral, and intimate energy. It was not for him or against him. It simply was. The rapids tossed him and turned him, but because his body was relaxed and buoyant, because he was no longer fighting, he was not dashed against the rocks. He flowed around them, a part of the water's own effortless movement. He was not in control, and yet, for the first time in his life, he felt utterly and completely safe. He was no longer Jirro, the great novice fighting a river. He was just a small part of the river itself, a temporary pattern in its majestic, ceaseless flow. He opened his eyes, not with terror, but with a sense of exhilarated awe. He was practicing mindfulness without even trying. He noticed the light sparkling on the spray, the deep green color of the water in the calm patches, the sound of the roar not as a threat, but as a symphony. This was the wisdom in surrendering to the present moment. An hour later, which had felt like both an eternity and an instant, the current gently deposited him in the calm, silent basin downstream. He emerged from the water, not exhausted and defeated, but invigorated, alive, and filled with a quiet, unshakable peace. He was laughing, tears of release streaming down his face. The abbot was waiting for him on the shore. Jirro bowed deeply, a gesture of profound gratitude and understanding. "The river has taught you," the abbot said. "It has," Jirro replied, his voice clear and free of its former strain. "I thought my test was to build a boat strong enough to conquer the river. I thought my test was to be smart enough to outwit the river. But the test was to become humble enough to let the river carry me." "And what was the practical technique?" the abbot asked, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "The technique," Jirro said, a slow, wondrous smile spreading across his face, "was to realize that my own struggle, my own resistance to reality, was the only real obstacle. The only thing I ever had to conquer was myself." Jirro had passed his final test. He had learned that true mastery is not found in control, but in wise surrender. He had discovered that the greatest strength is found in yielding, and that the deepest peace is found not in winning the fight, but in the profound, liberating realization that there was never any fight to be won, only a current to be joined.